So, uh, obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on right now in regards to gun control and people on both sides of it. I myself am a gun owner. I love to shoot. I really enjoy all of it. Um, but simply just going off and telling people, you don't have the right to do this or you don't have the right to do that, I thought I'd take a different approach. And I want to share, my reasons for why I chose to get a gun, why I got into guns, and the story that brought me to where I am today as a gun owner. So, if you guys will bear with me, I really would love to share my gun story with you. And it's going to start kind of tragic, but I can promise you that it absolutely gets better by the end. So, and again, it probably goes without saying, but just in case to clarify, not everyone, obviously, who owns guns or doesn't own guns made the decisions that I made based upon the experiences that I had. Uh, so okay, let me just get into this and explain my gun story. It starts back when I was a kid, maybe 4 or 5 years old, and growing up, never really had a lot of money, lived in bad neighborhoods, and my mom was a young mother. She had me when she was 16 years old. So she wasn't always the greatest at picking partners and people that she wanted to be with, and was young, so she was easily fooled into thinking that people cared about her when they didn't. And the first boyfriend that I remember my mother actually having and being with, his name was Tony. Now, Tony was not just an addict, like he wanted, one specific drug. He didn't. He wanted every drug that he could get his hands on to put in his arm, up his nose, down his throat, whatever. He wanted to do them all and didn't care who it affected. Tony would beat my mother for not tying him off right. Now, keep in mind, I'm 4 years old at this point in my life. And while a lot of this happened, and it happened regularly, my brother and I would obviously be asleep at night was when this usually happened, because, he was out during the day while my mother was either home with my brother or someone was babysitting him while I was in school. And, she would go to work, and the money that she got, he took from her and paid for his drugs with, fed his habit with the work of my mother, while he was out during the day stealing, doing whatever he was doing. So down the hall where my brother and I slept on a very regular basis, my brother would sleep while I laid awake, and I would keep my hands over his ears so that he couldn't hear what was going on. Sorry. And sometimes we even slept under the bed, and I told him we were going to play, we were camping. When the reality is it just muffled things more. Now, I felt the wrath of Tony and his high even one night. I got my first black eye from a grown man because, again, he would take my mother's money and spend that on his drugs. So there wasn't really money to buy us jackets in the winter. And of course, I was 4. I got sick. And I tried to be as quiet as I could one night because I didn't want him to hear me. And I thought he was asleep. So with vomit in my mouth, I was trying to get to the bathroom, which was right next to their bedroom. And before I even got across the living room, he was out there and told me it was my fault that I was sick and hit me in the face. And I went to school with a black eye. That was when I was 4. Now fast forward to I'm 12 years old, 8 years later, and I'm sitting in a police station filling out a report against an animal who raped my brother and myself. And I told you this wasn't a happy beginning. And again, I apologize. It's just not always the easiest thing. But what's worse than what happened was feeling powerless to stop it. And, you know, being a kid, and a lot of people go, well, you were just a kid. What could you have done? And they're right. I really couldn't do anything. These were grown men that were bigger than me, stronger than me, and really I had no control over anything that they did. But I did have control over what I did. And after that night of filling out the report, we found out that my brother and I were not the only ones, that this had happened to 20 other kids. And he had previously been locked up for it, and we just didn't know. We weren't aware. But the night after that, I told my mom, you know, I want to get into martial arts. I want to learn how to defend myself and defend my brother. And you know, I never really got bullied in school. Bullies, the only contact that I had with bullies was, and I am very proud to say this, was when I saw someone getting bullied and I was able to step in because I had at least some training at that point to have enough confidence to walk up and stop this person from hurting someone else, whether it be verbally or physically. And I'm to this day, I'm very proud to say that I was able to do that for those people. You know, and then I moved on from martial arts, and to be honest, at this point in my life, I really didn't know anything about guns. I knew what I knew from movies and how cool it looked, you know, when the good guy rushed in and you know, shot all the bad guys and everything like that. That's pretty much what I knew of guns. And I mean, who didn't want to be James Bond as a kid? You know, who didn't want to be the spy with the, you know, the little Walther, and which it's a cute gun. But anyway, you know, I went to the extent of like fantasizing about saving someone's life. And to be honest, really, I never even considered that the bad guys had to die. And so I thought about that for a while, for a long time. I was like, could I really do that? You know, could I take someone's life? And it really kind of played on my mind for a while. I mean, I thought about it so long and so hard. It was like, it became like Chinese water torture, just the same thought. Bam, 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 every time. And, you know, and then I heard a story that hit really close to home for me. And most everybody has heard something similar to this, so I'm just going to kind of give a basic background. And that is, the person in fear of their life goes and files a restraining order and puts their lives in the hands of a legal document that doesn't do anything. And sometimes even entices that person who's already angry to now do something else. We've all heard the stories of the guys who said, if I can't have you, no one can. And why a lot of battered spouses stay. That's men and women. So I realized that guns were a reality, and that no amount of martial arts training that I could ever do would ever stop a bullet. I realized that. So, you know, I wanted something that was going to. At that point, I kind of made up my mind that I wouldn't allow myself to be defenseless anymore. Uh, in the aspect of being able to equally defend myself from an attack. And you know, we put up fences around our houses. You know, we lock our doors. We put in security systems as forms of security, but those cannot save your life once bypassed. You know, someone kicks in your door, an alarm can sound, but what's the response time? Is that response time from an officer gonna be enough time to get to you and potentially save your life? And, you know, I live out in the country. The response time here is at best 10 minutes. 10 minutes. And that's just not okay with me, especially when it only takes a split second to squeeze a trigger and that's it. It's game over. Uh, you know, just think about how often we put our lives in danger and we don't even think about it like that because we think, oh, well, there's these safety measures in place and they're supposed to keep us safe and, oh, the bad guys are always going to get caught by the good guys. Well, if you want to live in that fantasy world, then that's fine. But that's fantasy. That is not reality. And reality is much darker and much scarier than that. The only real difference I find between someone who is anti-gun and someone who is pro-gun is that people who are pro-gun have accepted the fact that their life is in their hands and no one else's. And no one else is going to ever be able to necessarily defend you as well as you can in those situations and in those circumstances. And there's not always going to be a cop around when something happens. And are you really willing to risk your life for that 10-minute wait time? And that's a quick response time, by the way. There are plenty of cities out there where the time for someone to show up is 30 minutes. When I lived in Florida, a woman was being beaten in the middle of the road, and we called the cops. And it took them 30 minutes to show up, at which point this guy was long gone. And again, I started feeling like I couldn't do what I needed to do because this guy was much bigger than me. And at this point in time, I had had an accident. I had twisted my ankle really bad. I was on crutches. So I was at an even bigger disadvantage, and there wasn't really a whole lot that I could do about it. And I hated that. I hated that feeling of not being able to step up and do something. So now I told you that it was all tragic and we've gotten through the tragic stuff, and I told you that it didn't end that way. And so I'm going to go ahead and get to the good part. And that is that, you know, I am now a very proud gun owner. I try to remain as safe as possible with it, as responsible. I shoot as often as I can to improve my abilities with that gun, just as I did with martial arts. You don't just go in and take one class and then think you're capable of doing anything, you know. You know, there's still bullies out there. Only now they don't use words and fists to make their point. And for me, my gun is a tool of defense. It is an equalizer against those individuals. And I think that a lot of people think that gun owners are just like, we want to shoot or kill someone. And that is absolutely not the case. Like I said, thinking about the value of life is what made me respect my life even more and the lives of the people that I care about. And not even just the people that are close to me, people that I've never met before. I respect their right to life. But if it comes down to them or me or them or my family or them and anyone innocent than to quote Colion Noir, I'd rather spend my nights on a therapist's couch than in a grave. And that's my gun story and why I carry, why I love guns. And I hope that maybe this helps some people realize that guns are not bad. They're not bad. You know, you hear it all the time. Guns don't kill people. People kill people. And it's true. If you could show me one story where a gun loaded ammo into a magazine, loaded that magazine, racked that slide, and squeezed that trigger and ended someone's life all by itself, then I'm more than happy to jump on the anti-gun side. But that's just not how it is. It's not how it works. It takes an individual to operate a tool. You know, I've done construction and I've smashed my thumb with a hammer more times than I can count or ever want to do again. But it wasn't the hammer's fault that my thumb got hit. It was mine. We can't blame the tools. We don't prosecute the gun when something horrible happens. We prosecute the person who committed the act. Stop blaming the tool. Start blaming the individual. That's my gun story.